A very good afternoon and good evening to my friends and participants for this wonderful webinar being hosted by Lincoln University of Business and Management. Before I proceed further, could you all please confirm that I'm audible and I'm visible to all of you? Thank you so much for confirmation. If there is anything that you guys need assistance, you can always write down in chat box because as we proceed with the webinar, I request all of you to please keep your microphone on mute and also kindly switch off your video so that you can have an excellent bandwidth and learn maximum from this magnificent webinar that has been hosted by Lincoln University of Business and Management in association with the University of West of Scotland. So once again, I welcome you all to this fantastic session been organized by Lincoln University in the UAE. Well, to introduce myself, I am Krunal Trivedi. I am one of the core members, or you can say directors at the Lincoln University of Business and Management. And I have been joined by two of my amazing colleagues, Professor Divya Nambiar and Mr. Bobby Tarok. Professor Divya Nambiar is from Toronto, Canada, and Mr. Bobby is from Illinois, United States of America. So I request all my dear participants once again to please mute themselves and switch off the video so that you have a proper bandwidth and you enjoy the session with us. All right. Before I proceed further, I first and foremost would like to apologize for this delay by around 10 to 12 minutes because of some technical glitch. You see, technology at times could be boon or a bane, you know. So some connectivity issues and all the speakers connected in different parts of the world where the webinar has been hosted by Lincoln University in the UAE, and we, the speakers, are from different parts of the world. So my sincere apologies to all of you, and I hope we are able to make it up. Let me not waste your precious time and jump right into the discussion. Let me introduce Lincoln University of Business and Management. The sole idea governing the origination of LUBM is empowering working professionals with continuous education that would be able to implement in the work environment in the near future. Lincoln University of Business and Management was founded in the year 2014, and it has been 7+ years now that we have been evolving with our brilliant partners to provide quality programs, customized, flexible, affordable, and globally recognized programs to suit the requirements of the working professionals. The model is flexible, yet it retains the essence of high quality education so that all our students, they are able to maintain a fantastic work-life balance. The delivery model is completely digital because no one can discount that since the pandemic has hit all of us so hard that the entire learning and the education system is now more dependent on the interactive platforms where all the workshops, lectures, and conferences are now being conducted. So welcome. I welcome all of you on behalf of Lincoln University of Business and Management and on behalf of the University of West of Scotland to this wonderful presentation. Next slide, please. All right, so we have some amazing speakers today who are joining us. There is a welcome note by Professor Stein, who happens to be the dean at Lincoln University of Business and Management. He's an amazing lecturer, have been worked with various institutions down back in the United Arab Emirates and also beyond. And I've been joined by Bobby Taruk. As I said, he's a brilliant personality, having amazing experience in the field of project management. He's been a certified Scrum Master and whatnot. He's got an amazing experience in his domain. When I talk about Bobby, he's a versatile and technically sophisticated certified project management professional, a certified Scrum Master, and a certified Scrum product owner with a solid, proven ability to effectively marshal talent and resources to produce high quality and timely deliverables, right? He has been working with various industries, retail, banking, hospitality, pharmaceuticals, and whatnot. So he has got amazing knowledge about industry. And I welcome you, Mr. Bobby, for this wonderful session. Thanks for being a speaker with us today. And let me introduce my colleague, who's just not been a colleague, but who's also been a family for us, a brilliant, a strong pillar with Lincoln University of Business and Management, Professor Divya Nambia. She's a decorated lecturer, not just with Lincoln University, but with various amazing institutions in the UAE, namely Curtin, Murdoch, and it goes right up to the York St. John University, and now with the University of West of Scotland. So she's an amazing personality, having her master's in engineering management and bachelor's in architecture. She's in PMP, PSM, and she's in lead AP. So I welcome all of you to this webinar that has been hosted by Lincoln University of Business and Management in proud association with the University of the West of Scotland. All right, moving to the next slide, I would have a short introduction, a short video where my colleague, Professor Stein, would be welcoming all of us to this webinar. So my friends, can you please play the welcome note? I request all my dear friends to please switch off the video and please keep yourself on mute.
A warm welcome to this program in project management, the program through which we guarantee and will definitely enhance your project management skills. It's a program that's brought to you by Lincoln University of Business and Management here in the heart of Sharjah in the UAE, in collaboration with the University of West of Scotland. Indeed an honor, the first of its kind. So warm welcome to each and every one of you. Thank you for your flexibility. My sincere apologies that I cannot be live streaming on this day. Unfortunately, I had a clash of schedules. It tends to happen these days with so many things being online and everybody wanting a little bit of time from your time on the cloud. But yeah, I thought at least I could put together a recording to send you my best wishes for this program. You might wonder who I am. My name is Stein. My surname is Hekruit. I'm a professor in strategy and leadership. But much more than that, I'm also the dean here at Lincoln University for Business and Management. As the dean, I'm primarily responsible to look at the academic rigor of the programs that Lincoln University offers to its students, involved in quality assurances, involved in institutional excellence, and also involved in working with other heads of the academia from the universities that we collaborate with, like the University of West of Scotland. I also engage with students. My email is available. My door is always open. For me, ultimately, it's important that you get as much out of this program as possible, and we're always open for ideas and initiatives, innovative thoughts on how we can make things even better. You have a fantastic administrative team and a support team at Lincoln University. You have a fantastic curriculum, great facilitators, great faculty, people with high levels of expertise. I'll also be teaching on this program. Really looking forward to it. But if all else fails, or if you just want to pay a compliment or make contact, you're always welcome to reach out to me as the Dean of Lincoln University at any given point in time. My area of expertise, I have an interesting history. I did not come through a conventional or traditional road of progress through the academia. I've actually been running my own entrepreneurial enterprises for just a little bit over, almost on 3 decades. Next year, 2022, will be the 3rd decade that I have done this. Started off in my younger years as a consultant, first in strategy, then in leadership, and eventually ended up spending a lot of time on supply chain and implementation. In my lifetime, I've worked in more than 48 different countries on the continent. Those are the ones that I could remember and count. One night, my daughter and I decided to make a list of all the countries that I have visited and worked in my lifetime. I haven't lived in all of them, but I had to travel there as a business consultant to help organizations to implement their strategies on the ground. So I don't have an official qualification in supply chain. I kind of ended up by default because of the fact that I gave strategic advice and often would see how companies struggled to implement it. I eventually ended up much more on the floor than in the boardroom. This implementation brought me in very close contact with project management. In my lifetime as a strategic consultant, you might find it interesting that I've worked in cold storage facilities that we set up in the port of Nigeria. I worked in distribution centers that we set up in Ghana for Shoprite Checkers, which is one of the larger retail stores in South Africa, my home country. I ended up working on the ground. I worked in an ice cream factory of all places, where we would bring systems and install processes, change cultures, change the way in which we do things to optimize efficiency and effectiveness in those organizations. And all of those, of course, had a starting point and an end point, a finish point, a goal that we were chasing. And that was my introduction to project management. Subsequently taken a number of executive programs in project management, and I also sometimes teach on project management. So I understand the pillars of project management. There's quality, there's resources, primarily referring to the financial side of things, the cost of it, and then there's time. We recently here in Dubai, where I have resided now for 6 years, went through a very difficult calculation whereby we were building up to Expo 2020, one of the largest projects internationally in terms of scope, time, cost, allocation of resources. We started with 45 people working as a small team 6 years ago, and closer to the completion of the project, ended up with almost 5,000 people on that project. Allocation of resources. All because we wanted to finish in time and not compromise on quality. Of course, unfortunately, due to COVID-19 and the pandemic and the lockdowns, the grand opening was severely derailed. And it makes for a very interesting case study. What do I now do with this project? What do I do with all the resources? Do I send them all home? Can I reallocate them? Can I extend the time? What does it do to the quality? So in my lifetime, I've worked on a number of practical projects on the ground, very closely related and very involved with project management. That's why I'm so excited about this program. Now, you might ask me that, if I didn't come through the conventional road of university in terms of my career progress, how did I end up being the dean for Lincoln University of Business and Management? How did I end up being a professor? Well, I kind of fell into teaching by chance. The turn of the century, I was invited by a business school to come and do a keynote because they wanted someone on the MBA to share some practical experiences. They wanted to make the program more practical and not just all academic and theory. And then when I did that, I kind of liked it. And I think I did something right because they invited me back. And so it progressed. And eventually I ended up doing complete modules on an MBA. Today, I'm proud to say that I have taught on no less than 7 international business schools in my lifetime since the turn of the century. I also work for Harvard Business School, publishing here in the region. I'm an Harvard Business Review author. I work for institutions like the Leron Professional Development Institute. And of course, as Dean for Lincoln University of Business and Management, I also teach on a variety of programs that they offer, primarily in strategy, business development, value creation, leadership. So really very much looking forward to this. And that's how I ended up in this position. I still run my own business as well. I'm the chief thought leader for a company called Platform for Connected Leadership, a company that also works very closely with Lincoln University in terms of their executive development programs. And that's the role that I play. That's, a bit of my background. For the rest, very much enjoy what I do. Love working with students, no matter what their age or expertise or experience. Love engaging and really love being a part of seeing how people develop, how their confidence level grows as they get right on top of the courses and the subject matters that they engage in. Now, of course, one might ask the question, why a program in project management? What has changed over the past couple of decades in terms of project management? And why is it today a lone standing program on this level? Well, the reason, of course, is the world today, as we know, it's much more complex than what it was 30 years ago. The kind of projects that we tackle, most likely today, are all on a global scale, not just regional. So this is not small programs where I have to make some changes on the production line of an ice cream factory anymore. No, these are now complex projects where I have to coordinate globally. I have to work virtually, just like I'm doing this video recording today, as if I'm in the room. You have to manage virtual teams. So project teams that you need to manage today, most likely will be multi-dimensional, multinational, coming from different parts of the world, multi-skilled, different levels of expertise. And you may not have the honor or the privilege, rather, the ease of working with them physically, face-to-face. You might have to do it virtually. So project management over the years, over the decades, has progressed as one of the key tools, in fact, the key tool when it comes to implementation. Yes, there's supply chain management. I also happen to author in supply chain management. I've had 2 books that I co-authored so far, published by Oxford University Press. And in that, we talk about the larger supply chain, from start to finish, raw material, sub-assembly, full assembly, warehousing, retail, customer, all the components that's required. But if you break those down, components down, and you go and look at what needs to happen in those respective components, up to a lot of detail and depth, it's really project management that's required. That's where you look at time, resources, cost, quality, accountability into the finite detail. And that's really why it is so important. So for us at Lincoln University, of course, very happy to be working with one of the leading universities, University of West of Scotland, when it comes to this program in project management. Thank you very much for taking the time out to attend today's induction. Again, my apologies for not being able to live stream. I wish you all of the best of luck. And I must tell you, in all the countries that I've traveled, in my lifetime, there's a significant difference. I truly believe it's the only differentiator that we have as people. It is those who have the opportunity, the good fortune, the privilege of education, and those who don't. You have that privilege. You have that opportunity, whether you're paying for yourself, whether you have a scholarship, whether you're being paid by the company. Education is the most powerful tool, the biggest game changer that you have. And what a great thing that you can do it through institutions like Lincoln University of Business and Management in collaboration with one of the leading institutions in this field, University of West of Scotland. Thank you very much. Best of luck. Bye-bye.
What inspiring words by our dean at Lincoln University of Business and Management, Professor Steyn. And he rightfully said, inspiring words though, quite inspiring, brilliant words, where he rightfully said that project management is an indisposable tool in today's world. We have so many project managers who have to manage complex projects and who manage wonderful teams, maybe a team of 3 members or a team of 300 or 3,000. And the success of the project depends upon how well effective you communicate with the team, how you're able to plan the project, execute the project, and finally the outcome of the project plays a very important role. And I rightfully state that there has always been a great reason why we need to study project management. The project management field is expected to see substantial growth over the period of around 5 to 7 years. So by 2027, we are expecting close to 7 million jobs that will be created in this particular industry. So people had this notion that project management is just related to engineering industry, or maybe say predominantly with the civil industry or the construction industry. However, I would make it very clear that project management is applicable. The knowledge of project management, or the skills that we gain from project management, is applicable to each and every sector or each and every domain, each and every department in the industry. So let's get talking, and I would love to invite my colleague, Professor Divya Nambiar, to come up and please run us through her deck of slides. Welcome, Professor Divya, and I'll hand it over to you now.
Hello, everyone. Just 1 minute. I am trying to turn on my video.
No problem. We are all excited to learn from you.
Error. Yeah, there it is.
Welcome, Professor. Good to have you again. And I'm sure that as excited as I am now, equally my participants, there are more than 160 participants today in this webinar. And I thank all of you for taking out your precious time. And we are looking forward to hearing from you, Professor.
All right. Thank you so much. Just on a quick note, team, I'm not able to access the slides. If you can share it from your end, it'll be great. So if I could just request the team to share the slides.
You want the control to run the slides up and down?
Yes, please, because I'm not able to find them. I was able to see them earlier. Now I'm not able to see the copy of the slides here.
Oh, no problem. Team out there, could you please give the control rights to Professor Divya so that she can run her slides by her own self?
Okay, so are you all able to see the screen, the slides?
Yes, we do.
All right, thank you so much. A very warm welcome to everyone on this session on building high performance project teams. And I'm so excited to have you all in here. And with this session, we have a small and simple goal with the 1 hour that we all have together here. Our goal would be to see, when we want to build high performance teams, when we want to look at how we want to restructure our existing teams, or even when we want to plan for new teams, what could we do in a way that we can enhance the performance of the teams? We can end up with what we really call as high performance teams. So just a brief introduction. I'm Divya Nambiar. like you guys are from the industry. I'm half an industry person, half a university person. So on my industry side, I help organizations to improve their project management practices. My background is from construction. I work on sustainable projects. So mainly the ones which go for LEED certification. And I also work with a lot of other industries, helping them set up their project management offices, doing corporate trainings for them. And so under many umbrellas, under waterfall, agile practices, whether it is Scrum or even Kanban. And the rest of the time, I do spend time with the universities and academia, because I believe it's a great platform where you can bring in the industry experience to other working professionals. And it's always wonderful to stay updated with students. Along with that, I do spend some time doing my research with Project Management Institute. So we work a lot on the future of project management and research linked to that. So a very warm welcome once again to everyone. So before we get on further with our discussion, I would just like to ask you one thing. Feel free to use the chat window. So it's a two-way communication. If you all could just drop in the chat, what is your industry and what role do you work in? So then I can keep the presentation as relevant to you as possible. So you could, for example, just mention that you're an engineer and you're from oil and gas. So like that. If you all could just put it into the chat window. Okay, thank you, Kshitish, for taking the start. You're a fresher engineer, architect from construction field. Okay. University, mechanical, government project officer, lawyer, student, lawyer, project manager, architect, auditor, civil engineer, operations, healthcare, financial analysis student, industry, okay, civil, education, international, officer at university, coal power plant, oil and gas, HR. Okay, great, great. I am looking through all of that. Awesome. IT, civil engineer, head of HR, process engineer. So that's amazing to see that we have such a wonderful mix of industries. And the best thing is, project management is not industry specific. And the scale of projects that we work on can really, really vary. The location we work on can greatly vary. The organization culture with the ones with whom we work can greatly vary, but project management at the end of the day remains the same. We customize it, but at the end of the day, the results are what really matter. So looking at high performance teams, I have one quick question to ask you before we start. What words come to your mind when you see the word high performance teams? So you can put it in the chat window. When you see high performance project teams, what comes to your mind? Efficiency, agile, flexible, okay. Efficient and fast process implementation, collaboration, collaborative, quality results, teamwork, meeting a profit target, flexible teamwork, achievement, target, success, target. Okay, so target looks like the most common thing that we can see. Accuracy, all right. Teamwork, yeah. Adaptive, excellent time, scope, and quality management, leadership, very important. Performance, yes, absolutely. Profit, leaders, outcomes, cooperative, very, very important. Time, cost, understanding each other. Yes, 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 absolutely. Excellent. So all of these elements that we see, so there are a whole lot of common themes that we can see that every time we think of a high performance project team, these are the typical things that come to our mind. And a high performance team is a kind of concept which many industry leaders, many people from the academia, many researchers, they've been trying to define and say, what exactly qualifies as a high performance project team? And there are many definitions to it, but for our webinar, let us start with the one which is most commonly accepted, and then we can build on from there. Typically, a high performance team is a team or an organization, or it could be a virtual group, like the way we are running our projects right now, which are highly focused on their goals, and they can generally achieve superior business results. So typically, when you compare a typical project team versus what we call as a high performance team, a high performance team usually will outperform all other similar teams. and they will usually outperform the expectations. If you look at their composition and then you look at what they've actually been able to achieve, you can see a stark difference. And then you go back and say, wow, how did that team end up delivering, where they reached? So that's the interesting part about a high performance team. Now, this definition of high performance team is general. It is not project specific, but it is, whether you're into operations projects, it's pretty wide. But then when we from the project background look at it, it becomes a little more tricky for us, because when we think of a team, now, if I'm working in an operations based sector, most of the times I'm working with very familiar people and we have very repetitive processes, and process improvement is way more easier. When you're looking from a project background, your team is more dynamic and more diverse. Every project, you don't have the same team. I may work on projects which have external stakeholders, which have an external customer. You get a client request and then you initiate a project. I could be working on a project which is more internal. So for example, I could be a department in a company which services another department or the organization. So depending on all of these factors, what we call as a team can really, really vary. But at the end of the day, what we are really looking for is how can we make high performance teams? And if I look at my existing team, what can I do to kind of enhance performance? A quick question to you. When we look at the term high performance team, how old do you think this concept is? Which year do you think this concept might have come in? Does it look like something which came in the last 5 years, like, or 2015 types, 2000 types, older than that? Give a good guess. Okay, so I can see 2015 as one guess, 10 years old. Okay. Over the others, give a good guess. The answer really doesn't matter. Thousands of years old. Okay. 50 years. 5, 20, older than that. 90s. Okay, very old. Right. Interesting. BCs. Yeah, probably when you wanted to make the pyramids, maybe. Okay, 20s. Okay, so let's take a quick look at a brief background in terms of a timeline. I don't want you to run through the history of it, but I just want to give you a brief background so that we get an idea of how old this concept is, what has been done with this concept, whether it has worked or not. So if you generally look, the first concept of a high performance team came up way back in the 1950s through a research by a UK university. This concept was defined. And at that point, it was a very theoretical concept. It was like an ideal concept of what a high performance team could really look like, but it never really materialized into something practical. And later, somewhere close to the 1980s, that's when companies like GE and Boeing and the erstwhile HP at that point, they started to actually work on these concepts and let's see if we can get results. And did they get results? Yes, they absolutely got really amazing results. And the tangible output that they could produce, it was very, very evident. Then how come that if it's such an old concept, then why are we still talking about it today? And why don't we see so many high performance teams all over the world? So I'm not talking about a concept which has come in the last few years. It's a pretty old one. But what has happened is with time, when you look at the high performance team, when GE and Boeing implemented this concept, it was very successful. A lot of companies replicated what they tried to do, but then gradually there was so much a focus on the performance and the tangible outcome that the people related element was just left out. And then gradually high performance team became more like a stress. It became more like more KPIs, more measurable activity, more measurable deliverables. And with time, the concept faded because it kind of looked like a situation which is going to create a whole lot of burnout rather than a balanced approach. So, a little while later, the concept died out. And but again, towards 2000s, this concept again really kicked in. And again, it was revamped by GE and Kraft Foods. And today, as we see from the 2000s, the concept of high performance team has been on a growth curve, and the way the industry is performing now, the kind of environment we are in, with so much of technology coming in, so many industries facing a lot of disruption, we can see that high performance team is a concept which is just going up the curve. So now, okay. Team, I just wanted to mention something. I'm actually able to see the slides only as a thumbnail. Is there something that you would be able to do? If you can just, like maybe share from your end. Just it's just a request to the Lincoln team. I'm only able to see the slide as a small thumbnail, so I'm not even actually able to read through it. So if you could just share it and make it a little bigger, if you could share it from your end. Okay, I'm still facing problems with the control somehow. No worries, let's, okay, so I think that's an issue someone else is also facing. No worries, let me just try and navigate through this. Okay, so, right. So now what we are really going to be doing is, in our session that we have today, we are trying to understand the team's life cycle. So what we're going to do is, before we start thinking about how we can build a high performance team, we are going to look at what is called as the stages of team development. Why? This is a concept which was given way back in 1965 by Bruce Tuckman. And when you have a team, these are the inevitable phases of the life cycle of any team. Now, this is a very popular concept. Some of you might be already very familiar with it, but we're just going to go into a little more details, try and understand what it is. And what you would really want to see is, when you start forming a team to the time you work with them, the team's composition, the way team members perceive each other, it changes with time. So typically what happens is, now I want you to think about it. Imagine the first time when a team comes together. That stage is called as the forming stage of the team. So in the forming stage, especially when you're put in with new team members, what would generally be happening is that people will not be very open to each other. People are still trying to find out. So if you put first time together in a team, where am I standing? Where are you? What is your role? What is my role? What are we trying to, what are the kind of objectives we are trying to achieve? So this is like the forming stage of the team. And what happens is, a lot of times when we do scheduling on our projects, we tend to ignore this fact. What we end up doing is, we would end up saying that, okay, this is a certain activity, it's going to take 5 days. I'm going to put 5 days into my calendar. But what you would realize is, when you work in a team, the first few days actually work really doesn't happen, because the team is still undergoing what is called as a forming stage. Moving on further, once the team is a little more comfortable with each other and they start addressing ideas, so you kind of agree on what the common objectives are, the team starts becoming more open to each other. They start discussing ideas, they start discussing concepts. This is when conflicts can come in, because my methodology of how it should work versus how your methodology of how it should work, that can clash. Personality styles can clash. Your approach to work can clash. Ideology clashes could be there. So if it's handled smoothly, it works fine. But then in a lot of cases, this is your storming phase. With time, what we also realize is that if we continue like this, the project is not going to move forward. So then we gradually learn to start adjusting to each other's work habits, preferences. We learn to accommodate the differences, agree on common methodologies, how work needs to be done. So that's when we enter the norming phase. And once we enter the norming phase, after that comes what we call as the performing stage. So this is where we are actually working on the core deliverables. We are achieving the outputs, and this is when eventually you end up with those quality deliverables that we are really looking for. And then eventually the adjourning stage is when, at the end of the project, you celebrate your successes, look at your lessons learned, and the team moves out. Now, the fact is that every team undergoes forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. And when we plan for our projects, it's important to remember this particular aspect. So when you're scheduling for your team, when you're putting down timelines on your calendar, especially if the team is working, you've got people working together with each other for the first time, this is something that you would really want to mark into planning your buffer timelines. Now, a quick question. What stage do you see your team is in right now? Where do you see your team? Forming, okay. Norming, performing, okay, right. Forming, performing, right. Storming, right. Okay, and this becomes very, very important. So for us to kind of understand where we are right now, and the interesting things over here is sometimes from the performing stage we can go back to storming, because maybe we are in the performing stage, but then when issues come in, that's the time when we may go back to the storming stage. If the team members know how to collaborate, they may come out of the storming stage faster. If you have certain better ground rules and the leader facilitates it, there is more trust, it's easier to come out of the storming stage. For sometimes what happens is some projects, the storming stage is like permanent. It just stays through and through the entire project. And this is something that we would want to recognize at every single project, knowing what stage your team is in and then taking corrective actions accordingly. So our goal today was to focus on the high performing project teams. So I'm 1 year in my industry right now, and it still feels like we are in the forming stage. Absolutely happens a lot of times. Sometimes we feel that our team is stuck in a particular zone. It is stuck in forming, it's stuck in storming. Absolutely. And now there are ways to make this process more efficient. And what we are going to look at is not just how to make it efficient, but we are going to look at that high performance team we are talking about, how to make it really work in that high performance team. So when we want to make a high performing project team, and I'm going to keep it as simple as possible. So as a quick guideline, there are 3 steps we need to remember. So if you remember these 3 steps, there is a much higher chance that you can convert your existing team or plan for your teams for the new projects. You can end up with high performing teams. So step 1 is right in the beginning. When you make the team composition, that becomes very, very important. There are some things we need to consider at that time. And once you have the right team composition in place, and as you move forward with your project, you can expect some storms. They are bound to happen, because we're talking about different people with different skill set, different kind of personality, different kind of ideologies on how things should work. So the storms will be there, but we learn how to sail the storms. We figure out what kind of guidelines we can make, what kind of ground rules we can make. And the third element would be to know how to monitor and manage the performance of the team and overall the project. So we're going to keep it very, very simple. What we do in the beginning, which is when we form the team, and then what we do during the execution stage, which is like when we want to sail the storm, and what do we do to monitor and manage the team's performance. So when we look at so let's start with step 1, which is forming the right team or the right kind of team composition. So next time, for your next project, when you're choosing a high performance team, so if you're already into the project, this is something that you may not be able to do much right now. But if you're bringing in new team members, or the next project where you're going to be choosing your team members, so now you could be in a managerial role where you're bringing in the team members, or you could be a team member and you want to improve the performance of your team. What are the major things we should consider right in the beginning? Let's take a look at that. 3 elements, very, very critical. First is the skill set. So when you're bringing in a new team, you want to ensure that your team has complementary skill sets. What do we mean by when we talk about complementary skill sets? Your team size can vary. What you want to see is, what are the project's objectives? What are the individual skill sets of the team members? And how do they complement each other? So I'll give you an example. If I have a project, now when we all know that when you look at project success, the most critical factors become completing the project on time, completing it within budget, completing within quality constraints. And depending on your industry, you will have certain other parameters. Like, for example, it could be sustainability related goals, or it could be security related goals. So those things will vary with the additional success factors with your industry. When you talk about complementary skills, I'll give you one example. Suppose my project is more deadline constrained than quality constrained. So of course, time, cost, and quality are all important, but you would usually see that for majority of the projects, one of the elements is a little more important than the other. I want you to think about your project. In your project, what is more important? Time, cost, or quality? In the current project that you're working on, which one takes a little more precedence? Time, both time, cost, time, both. Okay, reliability, quality, all three, both, quality, cost. Right, time, cost, quality, all three of them. Right. Now, credibility. Right, absolutely. So now, thanks for sharing that. And in fact, that's something that we can see for everyone's project. It's important to finish on deadline. It's important to finish within budget. It's important to finish with the quality which is expected. But then in some projects, in fact, in majority of the projects, one of the things takes a slightly higher precedence. So I can have a deadline constrained project where I already know that I need to complete the project on 31st of December. I can have a budget constrained project. My client is okay if I delay the project by 6 weeks, but for him, it's more important that I stay within the budget. Or I can have a quality constrained project. The client is okay even if you have a little bit of a delay. He's ready to put in a little extra money, but the quality, the end deliverable, the performance, that's probably the most important thing that you cannot compromise with. Now, when you are choosing your team and when you look at your team members, you will see that there are a lot of differences. When we talk about skills, one is the technical skills to actually get the project done. At the same time, when you look at the project management skills, because some people by nature, they are good with time management. Some people, they are slightly more quality focused. Like, for example, I'm sure you might have seen that one particular team member you have who is very particular about everything being right. He's like the perfectionist. Yeah. So he wants to ensure that everything goes right. Everything should fall in place. But then this particular team member may not be that great when it comes to the time management related aspect. You have those team members who would really want to ensure that everything gets done fast, everything finishes, but then he's not that kind of a stickler for quality. So you want to ensure that your team has got complementary skills in place. And these skills have to be aligned to the goals. These skills I'm talking about, the technical skills, as well as the project management related skills. And who is leading the team? What kind of leadership skills do they have? That is the most important thing. So what kind of leadership skills do they have? Are they more like an autocratic kind of a leader? Are they more like you mentioned, yes, team spirit? So are they like a more inclusive kind of a leader? All of these things become important. Another thing you would want to ensure is to avoid duplication. What do I mean by duplication over here? We may need, so for example, I need for a certain technical job, I may need, let's say, 3 resources. But then sometimes we have 4 or 5 people on board. You can have them as a buffer, but when you put them onto your resource calendar, what might happen is it becomes more like, okay, you do this and I do this, and people are actually not completely engaged. And it becomes more like shifting responsibilities because the roles and responsibilities are not clear. So you would want to also take care a little bit about avoiding duplication. Okay, I can see some questions in the chat window. I have a question on HPT team composition. I have a new project that was just awarded to my company, and I'm the one handling the client for such a project. Now the team members I like to work with on this project are currently working on a different project. How will you advise? I asked the management for at least 2 of these guys who sync perfectly well with me. Okay, so Matthew, in that case, what you would really need to do is when you are planning for your team, you would need to speak to, so do you have a PMO, or who assigns the resources? Do you have a PMO, or is it like a resource manager? So if you have someone like that, you would want to talk to them. You would want to talk to the project manager of the other team. You would want to put both your resource calendars together and see what are those specific times. So first, so there'll be a couple of things we need to see here. Which project is more strategic in nature? which project has a higher priority, and how critical are these resources, and how can you align your calendars in such a way that if these guys are if these guys are important, then they go to the more higher priority project. How can both the project's resource calendars be aligned in such a way that you can schedule them to manage both of them? So this is something that your PMO. So I can see your message here from the private chat which says general manager. So this is something you would need to discuss with your general manager, taking along with you the project manager of the other project. Okay. So can you also share your opinion how to keep the performance high for the teams having too much of changes in longer projects like 4 years? So many team members come and go, but it's always like storming. I will definitely be happy to address that as we go through the session. We'll be talking about that for sure. Okay. So now, one part is the skill set when you're choosing your team. Second part is the size. Now, when I say team size and I say 3 to 10, now, of course, depending on your industry, your team size could really vary. Like, for example, if on a typical construction project, the team we are talking about is probably 200 to 500 people. But then, and maybe if I'm looking at a smaller project, I may be even looking for a team size like 5 to 6 people. But then what is this particular team size we are talking about? So even on a larger project, which spans many years and it's a mega project, you will have that smaller team that you work with. So your high performance team is like a micro team within the larger performing team. So that smaller team that you have, that smaller micro team that you have, which possibly has got one leader on the top, how big or small can it be? It makes a difference. So typically, if you would see, anything between 3 to 10 usually ends up being a reasonable size. And why? Because for a leader, there are what are called as effective spans of control. So these, I'm talking about the direct leaders. So generally, if you have, now this, you could be working on a waterfall project, you could be working on any agile methodology like Scrum. So they have very predefined team sizes in that case. In a waterfall approach, you don't really have predefined team sizes. If you generally have less than 3 team members, it's too small to actually come up with innovative ideas, support each other, but it also depends on your technical work. When your team sizes are larger than 10, a whole lot of your team members, they're going to get lost in the crowd. So research generally says that anything between 3 to 10 is good, but then you would also need to look at your the scope of your work. And if you need teams which are generally larger than 10, it might really help that you split them into 2 micro teams which can be managed independently with a leader. So we talked about choosing the skills, we looked at the size, and the third thing which you definitely don't want to miss is the personalities. And I'm going to give you a snapshot today on a few types of personalities you can look at. In fact, that there are over 20 different models on how you can look at personalities of team members. I won't really be recommending anyone. It's not about which model you use. It's about picking one you feel most comfortable with, but then really, really using it on your projects. For this discussion, because we've limited time with each other, I'm going to show you one model and we'll see how we can use it, so which can help us understand our teams better. So yeah. So this one that you can see over here, this is called as the DISC model. And this model was first given by Dr. William Marston from Harvard University. And he said that what this particular model says is that broadly, you can divide your team members into 4 kinds of categories. So there are, as I mentioned, there are many models. There are Belbin's model, which divides teams into plant and finisher and starters. So there are many models. I'm going to explain just one of them. And as we speak, what I would want you to do is try and identify which personality type are you, and try and see if you know people in your organization or in your team who are of the other personality types, and then we'll see what needs to be done. As we speak, what you would also see is that you may have characteristics of more than one, but what we are broadly looking over here is what is your major dominant personality style. So you may have a combination of 2, 3, but then broadly, which category do you associate more with? Like 60% of your skills are more on which side? So let's take a quick look at them. One type is the dominant personality type. So if I'm getting in and making a team of, let's say, 7 people, I would want to really see that do I have people who have a dominant personality style. So the dominant personality style people are those who are more direct in their approach. They're very result oriented. They're firm. They're strong willed, and they're forceful. So what you would be able to see is that when it comes to, so typically how you would see these people, they are like the bottom line organizer of your team. They really place a lot of value on time. They will, if you generally look at the project environment, they will challenge the status quo. These will be the guys who come up with those innovative ideas. They're ready to experiment with something different. So that's the value that they bring to the team. So they are like your ground, which organizes everything and says, this is how things need to be done. And I'm ready to try something different. Let's push it beyond. Let's try the different methodology. So these guys bring a lot of value to the team. Now, the challenge that you might have, so if you may have a dominant personality, or if you have a dominant team member, the only so he brings a lot of value to the team, but the challenge is they may sometimes overstep authority, because this guy wants to do something. He wants to bring into those bring in those differences. So they do tend to overstep authority. They may tend to have a slightly argumentative attitude, mainly because they want to get things done. Typically, they dislike routine. And there is also a chance that if you have team members like this, they may end up taking a lot of work on themselves, and sometimes more than what can be handled. And that is because they really believe that they need faster results. These guys are amazing starters and amazing finishers. Now, are any of your dominant personality, or is there someone in your organization, in your team, have you seen any dominant personalities in your team or in your organization? Yeah. Are you able to recognize them? Are you able to pinpoint and say that, okay, she's talking about that guy, that guy I always get into fights with, that guy who never listens. Yeah. But then he's really good at what he does. Yeah. 100% you. Great. Exactly. So now what do we do in that particular case? For me, I can say something. For me, he's a leader. Okay, that's me. Now I can see some of you are really connecting with this. Now, how do you work with them? So what happens is, if you're leading that team and you have a dominant personality, we need to understand them better, because but they can be really amazing and very, very, they can be like the life of your team, and they can be the people who really take your project to a higher level. But some of the things that we would want to really see is, one of their biggest worries is their idea being taken over by others. And they really don't like that. So if you want to really manage them, you don't want to give them a very routine kind of a task. You don't want to give them the boring stuff, stuff which looks like repetitive, mundane. They like new challenges. They wouldn't enjoy if you give them very similar projects back to back. So if they've done a certain kind of projects, they want the next project to be a little more challenging. If you give them similar 3-4 projects, they're going to be like, I feel stagnated. I want to leave my job. I hate the company and I'm looking for a new job. Let me update my CV on LinkedIn. Let me run out. So these are the guys who will also move out very fast. So you want to retain them, give them new challenges, give them some power, give them authority to take those risks. They thrive in that environment. They want to make decisions. They want that freedom from you. So you need to give them that. If you want to, kind of talk to them, you want to kind of challenge them, or you have to disagree with them at certain points, they will generally be very aggressive if you disagree with them. So, and if you really want to question their ideas, you don't want to tell them why their idea will not work. It's a huge put off for them. You don't want to say that. They are the big picture thinkers. So don't get into details. So when you talk to them, don't talk about those details and say, you know what, your idea is great, but those fine things, those things are not going to work out. They are people who want to talk about the what. They don't want to focus on the how. They go with the assumption that we'll figure out the how later. Let's focus on the what. Let's look at the big picture that we're going to do. We'll get the team, we'll get the rest done. So how is not important. Generally, they won't even enjoy a lot of small talk. So if you're having a meeting with them and they're really focused on time and you're going to have a whole lot of small talk with them, it's going to be a huge put off for them. And they're going to be like, I have a lot of stuff to do. So can you just come to the point so that I can move forward? So this is how you work with the dominant personality style. I'm a combination of conscientious and dominance. I'm a complete finisher. Okay, all right to you. And so that's the whole idea. We try and either recognize where we are, and we recognize our team members so that we can see the value they bring to the team and also know how to work with them together. Now, let's look at the other one, the influential type. The influential people, they're outgoing, they're very enthusiastic, they're very optimistic, they're very high-spirited and lively, and they're very trusting people. If given a choice, they will first trust the team. Now, in some cases, you may find that some people don't trust first. These influential people, if given a choice, they're trusting. They are amazing problem solvers. And one of the best thing that an influencer, the power that he brings to your team is he is an awesome motivator. He usually has a positive sense of humor. He's like the peacemaker. He will negotiate through conflicts that the team is having. They really enjoy working with others. And for them, they're ready to listen. They enjoy the discussions, and they are amazing starters. They may have some troubles with the finishing part, but then you can see that they start a lot of initiatives, and they will go out of their way to keep the team comfortable. For them, it's very important that you have a nice, peaceful working environment. They will go out of the way to ensure that the team is comfortable. And a quick question: how many of you identify with yourself with the influence type? Or at least you've seen someone who's of this type in your team? Yeah. Okay. So I can see either you've at least seen someone or you are this kind of a person. Great. So now they bring a lot of value to the team. They're like the binding material of your team. So now when we work with them, 50-50, okay. So when we work with them, what do we need to be very sure? For them, their esteem needs are very important. They need to be recognized. They need to be appreciated. And they want a fun work environment. They are not really so if you have a very strict kind of a very rigid, strict kind of a work environment, they're not really going to be enjoying this. So they need more like a fun work environment. As a leader, if you're their leader, you need to be ready to listen to them. You need to give them they have lots of ideas. They want to talk about it. You want to give them that bandwidth. But sometimes they're not very great with sticking to schedules. So you want to go back and check on the action so that the ideas are also eventually turning out into something tangible. You want to ensure that you give them enough time for social activities. Those things are extremely important for them. They may sometimes end up over-promising because they're so full of ideas, but then you would definitely want to keep an eye on that, whether the tangibles are coming out or not. How are they with leadership? That's a very interesting question, Tagrid. So it depends. Now, if your leader, because the leader will also have a personality style, if they have, his high spirit makes me stressed. So if the leader is more of the dominant style, he may find this guy as the loose guy in the team, the guy who doesn't bring out the deliverables. But if the leader is also of the influence or the conscientious type, they usually get along very, very well. So if you're in the leadership position, then you would need to be able to manage all four of them. You need to we all need to get a balance of all four of them. So quickly moving on to the next one, which is the steadiness. So people with the steadiness style are more even-tempered. They're more accommodating. You would see they're more patient overall. They're more humble and they're very, very tactful. So they're very good listeners. Like your influence people, they're very good talkers. The steadiness type, they're very good listeners, amazing team players. And they are very, very predictable and they can be very, very friendly people. So, the buzzword for them is they're reliable, they're dependable, very loyal. And the most important thing you'll see that they're great listeners. They're out there to listen to what you want to say. Yeah. Okay. So I can see Royston has already identified me. I can see that. Generally, so they will be known, if you ask the first thing about them, that's the most loyal and dependable guy on my team. So that's why, the word comes steadiness. They generally like close personal relationships. They want the team to work harmoniously. They don't like the conflicts. And for them, when it comes, they love the detail part. The dominant people, they sometimes don't enjoy that detail part. But these guys, they are amazing team members because they love the detail. They like predictability. They like more routine. And they usually, if you have team members like that, they would prefer that you finish one thing and then you start with the next one. You don't want to bombard them with 6 different tasks, one back to back. They're going to hate you for that. So they would much rather want that, let's do one thing at a time and then let's just do it properly. Yeah. So for them, it's very important that they secure good relationships with other people. And as a leader, if you're a leader of this kind of a person, you need to be a kind person. You need to be a patient person. You want to avoid confrontation. So, which basically means that if there are things you disagree, you want to be firm, but you don't want to be aggressive with them, because then they're going to go away. You're really going to disconnect with them. You don't want to be like a very demanding and a pushy kind of a leader. So that becomes very, very important. I did the DSC assessment recently, and my style is DI to the extreme. That is near the outer circle. I do not work well with the CNS style. Yeah. Okay. So what you can do, Mohammed, in that case is that look at your team composition, identify the C and the S kind of people. So if you are their leader, or anytime, if you're, let's say, for example, if I'm looking at an S person, you want to talk to that particular team member, be very kind, be very patient, don't confront them. And so, if you have you want to listen out. They are great listeners. They really believe in close personal relationships. So be firm with them. If there's something you don't agree, be firm with them. But at the same time, don't be aggressive. So, that relationship building is a little more important. For the dominant guy, I can just go and tell him, and he's more happy with clearer feedback. This guy, you need to build a little bit of rapport first and then proceed to the next point. Okay. How to use this model, as sometimes team members are unknown and new. So there are multiple things. Sometimes you can find, so there are a lot of online tests which can help you identify the personality styles. So one is, people can just take the test. It just helps you recognize it, directly. Otherwise, what you can do is, if you understand the 4 models, by and large, you can, even if you cannot pinpoint them perfectly, like by and large, right now, you're able to make out and say, okay, that's the dominant guy, that's the influential one. That itself gives you, for starters, some guidelines on where to start. Now, looking at the last, or the conscientious people, or who we also sometimes call as the compliant people, they are more analytical in nature. They may be more reserved. They like to keep things very, very precise, slightly private individuals, but very, very systematic. So typically, these guys are the quality guys. They are like perfectionists. For them, they always keep very high standards. They're very, very systematic. They're very, very careful. They work with facts more than opinions of people, more than, what will he think and what will I think. These are the people who stick for standards and facts. They can be very valuable to the team, because the C, they are the ones which actually bring the team and ground them into reality and say that, okay, one is we are getting carried away with our emotion. This is the fact. This is the reality. This is what the standard says. This is what our governance policy says. This is what the project management methodology talks about. We're not following the right methodology. So now for these people, more than relationships, the standard and the methodology is really, really important. And they can get bogged down by the details. They will give in rather than arguing. But for them, for one of their biggest fears is your project not being accurate or your project not being correct. And they hate to be criticized on that. So these are people, if you're going to criticize them on the accuracy of their work, they take it very, very personally. So as we said, they are always motivated by high standards of quality. They can do pretty well with limited social interaction. They like detail-oriented tasks, logically putting information. So if you want to confront this person or you want to work with them, when you want to work with them, they will be pretty okay working alone if required. So for them, it's not necessary that you have to have a large social circle. They'll be pretty okay working alone. But they want a peaceful environment. They want structure. So if your organization or your team doesn't follow a proper methodology, if it's a project and there's no methodology, you don't have there's no proper way of defining the scope, there are no proper agreed upon structures, these guys are not going to like it. So they are heavily motivated by quality and by logic. And if you want to confront them at any point, you want to be very sure that you're not confronting them on their personality style. Don't confront them on facts like, this is how you interact with a team member. That is not okay. You want to confront them on facts. So do your research. These people tend to be perfectionists. Do your research and confront them on facts. So this is like a quick overview on the personality styles. I hope that you all have been able to identify yours. Practically blend of DICs, mandatory and successful leadership. Yeah, but the proposition is the key. Exactly. And what we want to be able to do is simple things. You would want to know what type you are. So we know what is good and bad about, or what's the right and wrong side of us. And we want to identify every single team member, because all of these people, they bring in really important value, but you want to be very sure that, we know how to work with them and how to talk to them. So once we have these broad areas in place and we've chosen the right kind of team looking at these things, the storm will still come. So it doesn't mean that these things are going to avoid the storm. The storm will still be there. So be ready for the storm and know how to deal with it. And typically, what are the things which go wrong in a team when you work in a team environment? So as when we were saying, when you think about high performance team, we said teamwork is very important. And you guys gave so many very, very important points. Trust is one of the biggest factors, which if broken in a team, the same people with these same skill sets, they're not going to give you your best. In a high performance team, we need everyone to bring in their best. And if trust is broken, this is where the person can contribute, but he will be skeptical and he was going to say, I don't trust you guys. Why should I contribute? I don't trust my team member. I'm going to give you an idea. You're going to take it up. I'm going to do something. You as my leader, you will take credit for it. Where is my recognition? So trust is something you don't want to break. Biggest problems, absence of trust. Fear of conflict. Some personality styles hate conflict. So you really want to be careful. Lack of commitment from some team members. So this could be because they're not very good with keeping deadlines. And if you have people who are good with keeping deadlines, they may feel that this is a major disconnect. Avoidance of accountability, inattention to results typically lead to dysfunction. And how do you deal with that stage? Have clear-cut guidelines and ground rules. They go a long way. So for a project environment, what kind of guidelines do you want to do? So you made the team. You want to have two distinct set of guidelines. One is for the project, like what are this particular project's objectives? And this will vary from project to project. You want to clarify it upfront. Like for this particular project, it's important that we complete, the quality is the most important deliverable. Timeline is important, but quality is more important. Or no, this is a deadline constrained project, or this is the budget is the most important. Clarify project objectives very clearly so everyone's clear on board. Have a team's vision. So this little high performance team, what are we guys trying to achieve together as one unit? Project tracking. How are we going to track the project? Who's going to track the project? Who's accountable for it? And what are the benchmarks we are going to use for tracking the project? Time, cost, quality, other aspects. And what are the project's priorities? You want to give these clear upfront in the beginning of the project. And from the personality side, for these team members, you want to give clear roles and responsibilities. So everyone knows their area, but they're not sidestepping on someone else's. You want to talk about the leadership, who is kind of accountable for the project, and you want to consider their leadership style, how it impacts the team. What are the acceptable forms of communication? I'll show you one example. What are the group norms, like especially when we come from such a diverse and multicultural environment, what is okay and what is not okay? What are the kind of group norms, and what kind of, when you have conflicts, what is a typical conflict resolution mechanism? You don't want to tell them once a conflict happens. This is something you want to tell them upfront before you start your project. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you one small example because all of this is pretty detailed. So let's look at one. Right now, we are almost all of us, I mean, depends on your industry, but majority of us are working with a virtual team. Now, just because you're working with a virtual team, there can be new challenges which come in, like having a common understanding, or language or cultural differences. Or if you're attending meetings without the video cam switched on, then the lack of body language, the lack of the tone of voice. We are interpreting things like things written on emails. So simple a tone of voice, it makes a lot of difference on what the person was trying to say versus how the words came out. Coordination, because does everyone have the right information, the right materials, the right skill set? And how do you, and especially since we work in multicultural teams, how do we honor the individual cultures along with working with the organizational boundaries? So for example, if you quickly want to look at in a virtual project team, what kind of ground rules would you want to set? When we have synchronous meetings, or when we are all online on one platform and working together, sharing a screen, what kind of ground rules? For the asynchronous work that we do when we are not together and we are doing it independently, what kind of rules will we have for that? How will we manage interpersonal issues in a virtual environment? What kind of tools do you need? What kind of guidelines are there for emailing or web meetings or document management? How is the status reporting going to happen? So how do we ensure that the project is visible to everyone? How will we manage time zone differences? What about turnarounds time? What about schedule compliance? What about, even working time? So what time is it okay to message someone? What time it is not okay? How about our virtual kickoff sessions? How do they get handled? You want to have ground rules and guidelines for all of them. Other challenges, like one of you mentioned in the chat window earlier, new challenges can come in when you have new team members. How inclusive do people feel? Groupthink generally happens when you have a lot of team members who are so let's say if I have a team of 7 people, but out of that 5 people are very close to each other, maybe because they bond together more socially, culturally, or they've all been together from a previous organization, they all came together, so they bond much better. And now what happens is when you want to ask for new ideas or initiatives, the group tends to agree on a common ground, because it is not because, let's say if I'm part of a group like that, it's not because I agree with the group, it's because you still want to be part of the group. So how do you avoid groupthink? You want to consider that. Biases, any natural prejudice biases that we come with, and what is acceptable and not acceptable in terms of communication. Now, on the ending note, something that I would want to talk about is, for any groupthink is counterproductive. Exactly. Like no one is thinking out of the box. Absolutely right. And this is something that you would always want to look out for as a leader. And you would want to have some guidelines and ground rules to see how this can be avoided. Now, as we said, for a team, trust, leadership, these are like mandatory binding factors. And I'm going to give you a very simple model to see how close that trust comes in. When you want to look at trust, there's this model which was given by Brewer, and he says, how much included do you feel in a team? And I want you to reflect on this, and I want you to think about inclusion inside your team. Now, it doesn't matter what's your personality style. If you want to give your 100%, it's very important that you feel included in the team. If you don't feel included in the team, people generally give 70% or 50% of what they can actually do. And how do you know that? Trust, or what we call as inclusion, or that feeling that you have when you want to work in a team, there are 2 factors. One is, how much do you feel you belong to the team? Second thing is, how much is your uniqueness preserved? When you want to work in a team, typically what people want to feel is, I want to feel that I'm part of the team, but at the same time, I want to preserve my individuality. And these things are very important. When in a team, there is low sense of belongingness, and there is low sense of uniqueness. That means your individual work is not that much valued. The team culture has become like one where the individual uniqueness is not valued, and the people don't feel that they belong to the team. This is where people get a feeling of exclusion. You could be part of the team on paper, but as an individual, you feel like an outsider. A different one is belongingness is very high. You feel really part of the team, but then there is nothing unique about you. You don't feel like you're contributing something unique. So the individual is definitely treated as an insider. Whenever they conform to whatever is the dominant culture of the group, when you follow the norms of the group, so you have to downplay your uniqueness just to get along with the team. Now, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever felt that you or people you know have to change your uniqueness, and you have to bend yourself a little just to be part of a team? It could be you, it could be someone you know. So this is not who you are, and you just have to bend yourself, or you just have to kind of, leave a little bit of your uniqueness just to be able to gel along with a larger group. Exactly. And there's a research which shows that overall in the world, 61% people face that. They need to tweak themselves just to gel along with a group. Does that give that complete sense of trust? Not always. So let's look at the other groups. There are some teams in which the belongingness is low, but the high uniqueness that you feel, so I feel I'm very unique, but I don't feel like I'm part of the team, that's where you have differentiated teams. Individual is still treated like an outsider, but then you really value them because of the very unique skill that you have. it could happen due to project requirements. In multi-ethnic environments, it happens. Absolutely right. Now, if you're looking for a high performance team, you really want to be in the last quadrant, the one which says inclusion. And that's like a really good model to be in. What happens there? The sense of belongingness is very high. So you make all people part of your team, but they don't have to change their unique features or their unique characteristics to become part of the team. So you learn how to gel with others, but you don't have to remove your uniqueness, which means high sense. So if you're part of a team where your sense of belongingness is high, but you are allowed to retain your uniqueness, that is when the trust is at the highest. And that is the point where team members contribute and are the most productive. So I would want you all to think about your team. And where do you think your team is out of these four? As long as they stick to general framework, it's okay for them to do things in their own style. They will make you feel you are different when you don't join them on their night outs. Absolutely. So where do you think your team is? Or even if you may not want to put it in the chat window, can you recognize where your team is? So do you feel that your team is one of these four categories? So even if you can recognize them, you can just, and if you don't want to put them exactly on the chat window, yeah, okay, so I can see differentiation, inclusion, yeah, right? And these things, these are minor things, but that level of inclusion is very, very important to have that kind of binding that a team has. So in general, with the team, encourage the team to speak up. When people speak, assume that they have a positive intent, because it could be just because of their personality style that they speak in a particular way. It could be because they're dominant, or it is because they are more of the steadfast type. That is probably the reason why they're saying what they are. So first, assume positive intent. Then reflect on the personality style. Challenge the what. If you have issues, challenge the what. Don't attack the personality style, which is really, really important. Show appreciation to the team, learn and grow together. And eventually, as you, with these ground rules and guidelines in place, as you go forward, monitor and manage the team's performance when it comes to, so track your project along with track the team's performance, because as you move forward, the learning curve should come down and the team should be able to perform better and better. So as a team, when we work together, there will be some headwinds, which are the challenges which we will face. But at the same time, the unique composition of your team, it brings in some advantages. These are the tailwinds which will help your team push forward. Doesn't matter what kind of project challenges we face. And we keep moving forward from there. So just as on the final note, high performance project teams are something which is really, growing in the future, especially because of the rise of technology, disruption, the kind of innovation we are looking at. We have way more globalized multicultural teams, customers, service providers, supply chains. For businesses, competition is only growing. We are working with virtual teams, which brings in another set of challenges. Traditional skills are getting redundant. We need new skills, and our customers' expectations are also growing with the time. So that is why high performance teams are in need of the hour. And it's just a future which is going to continue to grow. So with that, I finish my session here with you. So the next person will be taking over. I wish you all the best. I hope that you guys found something useful that you can take up from here. And I wish you all good luck.
Thank you so much, Professor Divya. It was such an amazing session that you conducted. We were all glued to what you were saying about the project management and how efficiently we need to manage our team and identify what exactly is going on, because teams are the ones that help any organization grow to the next level. So amazing. Thank you so much, Professor. It was quite amazing. Dear participants, this is what Lincoln University is all about. This is what Lincoln University believes in. And we at Lincoln University, we offer variety of programs exclusively crafted for working adults from different industries. We have got our students coming in from healthcare sector, from engineering background, from banking, from finance, from marketing, from general business, entrepreneurs, CSU designate students. Everyone, they form a part of the student association at Lincoln University of Business and Management. Lincoln University of Business Management, as I mentioned earlier, commenced its operation in the year 2014, and we are proud to have wonderful partners that we are associated with by providing their degree programs at Lincoln University. So we are proud partners with the University of West of Scotland. We have an amazing partner, the York St. John University, a heritage university down back in Yorkshire, England. Geneva Business School based in Geneva, a private business school in Switzerland. Then we also provide amazing, if you do not want to study a degree program, an MBA program or bachelor's degree program or an MSc program. However, you have time to upskill or reskill yourself and you would love to join short courses, short programs, transferable credit-based programs. You can always, we also have our proud association with world's leading awarding bodies, namely Qualify, OTHM, and Pearson's. So if you're looking for a short course of a 6-month program to a degree, MBA, MSc in project management, and hopefully very soon we might also have our doctoral program in place from a reputed university. Please do not hesitate to write to Lincoln University. You visit our website. You can write to us on the social media platforms, and our team would be more than happy to assist you with. Right now, I have Mr. Bobby, who is an industry personality, a great personality with us. Thank you so much, Professor Bobby, for your time that you are going to spare with the students here today, with the participants here today. And we always believe in by industry for industry. So the next part would be Mr. Bobby Toro. So Bobby, all over to you.
Wow, thank you very much, Mr. Krunal. How do I top Professor Divya? I think we should have Professor Divya as just a key. She should have done the keynote, and I should have been probably in the beginning. She did a terrific job. Good morning, everyone from Chicago. Good afternoon in UAE. Welcome to Lincoln University's webinar. My name is Bobby Tarut. Been practicing project management since 2003. We'll go probably a little bit faster because we kind of lost time with our technical difficulties. But let me tell you one thing. We did not plan our presentations. We did not coordinate with Professor Divya with my presentation. So you'll hear a little bit of a repetition, but I will expand a little bit on what she spoke about. But there's a lot of very similar concepts on what she talked about. So let me, can I forward this slide, or is someone able to forward my slide? So really quick, my name is Bobby Taruk again, bachelor's in architecture in the built environment, grew up in the Philippines, University of the Philippines in Manila. And then I worked my way towards the US, had a master's in urban regional planning in Blacksburg, Virginia, towards the East Coast. And then really got interested in project management in the .com boom and bust of early 2000. I had a major in project management, minor in MIS. And fast forward a little bit to today, working on software-defined data center for the state of Illinois, outsourced from intelligence to VMware, a premier vendor in the cloud, hybrid cloud, and software-defined data center. So I volunteer a lot of my time as well with Project Management Institute, Central Illinois chapter. I'm the VP there for publicity. And if we could forward the slide, thank you. Everyone's commenting, fellow Filipinos, do appreciate you. Everyone out there doing hard work at UAE. You forward the slide, next slide. I skipped it one slide, but you saw my journey. My journey has been, I have not been an overnight success. That's one thing I want to share with you. It's been a long journey for me through different industries, but in the end, I took all of that knowledge and training in architecture and managing architecture projects to today, but it's been a long journey for me. So quick review, Project Management Institute is the premier certification body within the project management space, including now in the Agile space. So not just SDLC and Waterfall, but also now in disciplined Agile and the Agile project management framework. So that's a quick review of the project management. It sounded to me that the majority of everyone here is actually pretty familiar with the concept of project management, or you already are practicing in the space. So I won't dwell too much on this topic. If you could forward the slide for me. When we talk, Professor Divya probably covered this, and she covered this a whole lot, but a quick search in this essential skills of project management. Effective communication, 90% of our time actually is practicing project managers. We spend 90% of our working time with communication. And Professor Divya, again, talk a lot about relationships and understanding people and people's personalities. Though I would venture to say that 70, 80% of a predictor of your team success, if you can negotiate all of the people relationships in your project. But other skill sets are, of course, the technical skill sets, technical leader, technical expertise, ability to schedule your project, managing your time. She talked a lot about leadership and managing risk, critical thinking, and problem solving. So those are your very essential skills. But I will talk about the three bodies of knowledge that I've really followed in the past 2 or 3 years now. If someone can forward a slide for me. I'm taking three key concepts in my presentation today. But a quick poll, if you could put in the chat, I think this was already done in the chat previously. If you could just put in the chat again what vertical you're in, that would be great. And you'll find out that actually it seems apparent to everyone now that project management really is, as you learn the concepts of project management, the principles are the same regardless of what vertical you're in. Healthcare, financial, I'm seeing construction, education. So the concepts of project management, be it whatever framework you will be applying, are pretty much applicable to any vertical. So if you could forward the slide for me, that'd be great. Again, three key bodies of knowledge that actually I have followed over a period of time for the past 2 years or a little over 2 years now. Right now, I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek. Some of you may know him. He has written the book, The Infinite Game, Leaders Eat Last. And then I will expand a little bit on the DIS model that Professor Divya talked about. And I believe all of these components really, when you conflate them, they all can point you in the right direction to have a high-performing project team. So if you could forward the slide for me. So just really quick, the rules of the infinite game. If you're not aware of it, there are no rules. The aim is to perpetuate the game. The game has to continue going on. Anyone can enter and play the game. Anyone can exit the game. Players are sometimes known, they're unknown. There's no time bound on the game. So imagine if you were playing that game, that would just disorient me. If we're playing basketball, we know we have a time limit. Filipinos are big basketball fans, by the way. There's a time limit. The team that scores the highest is the objective. You know who you're playing against, but an infinite game, those are the different rules. And as a project team, as a project leader, I believe that all of us have to embrace these key concepts of having an infinite game mindset. A lot of these will be repeating. Again, number one is just cause. That's one key element. Trusting teams. And again, Professor Davia talked a lot about that one. And I may go a little bit faster in this presentation because, again, Professor Davia covered them. A worthy rival is the third thing. The fourth is the capacity for existential flexibility. And I'll kind of an esoteric term, but I'll explain that a little bit. Leadership and courage is very important in leading teams, leading organizations. So these are the key elements of an infinite game. Let's forward to the next slide. I'll explain this a little bit. Having a just cause is the willingness to sacrifice my own interests to advance the team and organization's cause. So what's an example of that? The main example that Simon Sinek speaks to is the Declaration, the US Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal. As you learn more about US history and everything that's going on in the culture of the United States, you'll find out, as an example, advancement of women's ability to vote in the past. Housing policies continue to change and evolve to the notion of all men are created equal. And I'll speak later on, how do we apply this to project teams? For elements of a just cause, it has to be something positive. It cannot be negative. It's something that we run towards. It needs to be inclusive. Anyone should be able to embrace it, regardless of people's background. It has to be service-oriented. The primary benefit is not to one person, but a lot of people. It has to be resilient. It endures technical changes, endures time. It's a timeless concept. It has to be idealistic and bold, and sometimes it can be unachievable over a person's lifetime. So how do we translate this in a lower level? We're talking about projects, we're talking about teams, we're talking about organizations. Every single person in your team, and especially the project leader, needs to be able to articulate what's the project goal or goals, what's the mission, what's the vision for the project, what are the objectives. People need to be able to articulate and have what we call an elevator speech. So as an example for me, working in a software-defined data center, I can say we're working towards automating a lot of the manual processes today in provisioning of resources to application teams. What used to take weeks and sometimes months, we're able to do it in days, so we can save money, time, and in the end, serve the Illinois residents much, much better. So that's just a quick example of how I can articulate my project as an elevator speech. So in your projects, you should be able, everyone in your team should be able to articulate. If your project sponsor rides with you in the same elevator, you're going to the third floor as an example, you need to be able to articulate to your project sponsor, this is what we're working on. Does that make sense? Let's forward to the next slide. So in your, as a poll right now, what are the examples of something personal to you? What's a just cause or a mission for you? And it could even be outside of your workspace. As an example for me, I have a burden for people to be educated from a personal finance perspective. So for me, I coordinate a class here in the US, what's called Financial Peace University. So I do it for free, and I do coordinate classes for financial literacy. So that's a personal mission and vision for me. I do it for free. I've done it for 4 years now. I don't get paid for it, but that's an example of a just cause. That's something personal to me. So if you could put in the chat, if you haven't done so, that's well and fine. But is there anything that's near and dear to your heart that you sacrifice your time, even if you're not getting paid for it? Some of you may work in, as an example, in a food bank, or help volunteer your time in a specific organization. Yes, Giselle is saying, and volunteering her time. Red Cross is one, that's amazing. Trainer Daniel, that's good, where we do kind of do volunteer our time in the same space. Francis is mentoring young people around him. So that's very good. That's one example of a just cause. Women empowerment, Jeanette is speaking about that. COVID response, wow, Tony is doing tremendous work. So the second element to this having an infinite game mindset is trusting teams. I don't think I need to belabor the fact. I'm going to go a little bit faster, like I mentioned. We have to create a very trusting environment. We need to make people in the front line making discretionary decisions. We need to empower them. And then we need to expect people to show up at their best. People don't come to work in a fashion where they wake up in the morning and say, I'm not going to give my best today. So when we have a very trusting environment, the customers and the frontliners function well, the organizations thrive, customers are happy. Now, when I am not at my best, this is what I will do. If I don't want to foster a trusting team, I will try to hide information because I want to make myself valuable. I will hide information from the team or other people because I want to be the special person that has the special information, and I feel special that I can talk to the project sponsor as an example, that I'm the only person that's privy to this information. So let's flip to the next slide. There's a lot of things that we can actually do to foster and engender a very trusting environment. In 2008, as a quick example, when the economy was really bad, this is what I would do when the owner of the company flew into our office, and I would try to, metaphorically speaking, hide under the table because layoffs were happening and I didn't want to be laid off. So that's really a really bad example of I could not trust the owner of the company that I was going to be retained, or there were more layoffs that were coming. So that's not a good example of having a trusting team environment. More examples of how can we foster trusting teams? We have to have each other's back. If there's some failures on a project, as a project manager, I need to own it, and the team needs to own its failures. But when the team gets the accolades, I push it back to the team. It's actually the team that actually gets the accolades because they truly perform. We work as a team. We're united as one. We don't gossip. We don't gossip downwards to our direct reports. If there's negative communication that needs to happen, it needs to go up to leadership. Positive communication from leadership needs to go down all the way to the front line. And I don't even like the word Scrum Master in a agile framework, because a master just, it seems an oxymoron, because a Scrum Master actually is supposed to serve the team. And there has to be full transparency around the team and what the team is working on. If you look at the Agile principle number 5, principle number 5 says, we build projects around motivated individuals. We give them the environment and support they need to trust them to get the job done And what does that mean for you and I? Shouldn't be micromanaging people. Shouldn't be managing people. We need to be leading people. We need to trust people to get the job done. Not saying they can do whatever they want. There has to be some oversight, but we need to be supporting and trusting them to get the job done. Support and encourage them. Precisely, Giselle. Thank you. Next slide, please. So what other ways have you experienced to foster trusting teams? In your, if you're working in a team, project team right now, put it in the chat, please. What other ways have you done to foster and deepen trusting teams? Transparency, Roselle, thank you. Empowering team member, give them the power to make decisions, correct. Maybe up to a certain financial constraint. Trust people, yes. I will speak about that. Why do people micromanage? It's either the lack of trust, or could be their personality type. But now with COVID, majority of your workers are working remote. Micromanagers, I believe in the future, will not thrive in the future. So let's move on to the next slide. Team building activities. Yeah, you can absolutely do that. The third element of an infinite game mindset is having a worthy rival. Having a worthy rival reveals my inherent weaknesses. I used to run 5Ks before, and when I see the people doing a marathon or a 10K or 25K, I always ask them, hey, how was your run? Was that a PR? Meaning I asked the question, was that a personal record for you? You'll find out that most athletes, if it's an individual sports, they actually measure their PR, their personal record, meaning they're competing against themselves. It's a very similar concept with having a worthy rival. And we need to be careful. Having a worthy rival doesn't mean I'm looking at another person, I'm looking at another team, but I try to compare myself, and that's very dangerous. And I'll explain that a little bit better. I call it the comparison trap. To simplify the concept of worthy rival, think about benchmarking in quality management in TQM. You'll learn that more as you enroll in the project management or even an MBA with Lincoln University. You think benchmarking as just a quick explanation of the concept of the worthy rival. On a personal level, having a worthy rival, if I have the infinite game mindset, is that I'm thinking, Mr. Cronal, will you mentor me because you have achieved these levels and these goals of mine, and I haven't achieved them? I continue to fail in that regard. Mr. Cronal, will you mentor me? Will you coach me? And those are the things that I will improve. So that's the infinite game mindset of having a worthy rival. And then if you could flip to the next page. A quick story on the infinite game book. Simon Sinek attended 2 conferences, one for Microsoft. He also attended a conference for Apple. When he attended the Microsoft conference, all of the presentations were all about beat Apple, beat Apple, beat Apple. How can we beat Apple? When Simon Sinek went to the Apple conference, majority of the presentations were around what software can we develop, what apps can we develop, what hardware can we develop to enable the education industry. And you can tell right now, although Microsoft has moved away from hardware, Apple today is a very successful company. So you'll see that Apple, at the time of the publication of the book, had a very infinite game mindset, and not so much with Microsoft. Microsoft came out with, I don't know if everyone remembers, mid-2000, past 2005, they came up with something to compete with the iPod called Zune. and then they came up in Microsoft Phone, and where are those products today? So those are just lessons in having an infinite game mindset on having a worthy rival. So from a project team perspective, and you learn, if you're not familiar with the term Kaizen, again, you'll learn that through TQM and quality management as you get educated in project management. But one of the things that we ought to be doing constantly, even if you're doing Kanban or you're doing Scrum, 4 common questions when you're doing retrospectives: what can I do? What can we do? Let me step back a little bit. The first question should be, start with a positive. What did we do well? What should we be doing more? What didn't go so well? What should we be doing less? And then the last one would be the conversation around what 1 or 2 or 3 things can we implement to improve the team, improve our delivery, lessen the cycle time in terms of the features that we deliver. What can we do to improve it? Again, personally, on a personal level, ask someone else, will you coach me? Will you mentor me? I want to improve. So you'll see even in doing lessons learned or retrospectives that the worthy rival concept is very much applicable to managing teams and managing high-performing teams. If we could flip. The next element for the infinite game mindset is kind of an esoteric term, like I mentioned, the capacity for existential change. What that means is that it's the willingness for a very profound, a huge shift for the short-term cause to advance the just cause. So one prime example in this one, if we could forward the slide, would be when Steve Jobs visited the Palo Alto Research company, which primarily Xerox was there. I'm not sure if most of you are familiar, but I'll repeat the story. Steve Jobs was very enamored with the concept of the graphic user interface, which was icons and ability to use the mouse. So as they were leaving Xerox, the Macintosh wasn't around then, or wasn't created then, but as they were leaving Xerox, Steve Jobs told his executive team, this GUI is something that we really need to work on. We need to focus our efforts and our research and development on these GUIs. And one of his executives, as Simon Sinek tells the story, he goes, Steve, if we do what you're asking us to do, it's going to destroy the company. And Steve Jobs replied, better for us to destroy the company than the competition. So now you have the MacBook, you have the iPads, and Windows, of course, has benefited from that. We have all the Windows and the GUI and the icons and the keyboard and mouse, and history has moved forward with a huge leap with that capacity for existential change that Steve Jobs embraced. So let's forward to the next slide. From an application perspective with projects and project teams, I'm not sure how familiar you are. I won't talk too much about these specific examples. I had a chance to work for Sears for their online business unit. Sears now, today in the US, is still a failing both e-commerce and brick and mortar retailer. Where's BlackBerry today? I had one of those BlackBerries early on in my career. I was really enamored with when I got the BlackBerry, but where is BlackBerry today? The Blockbuster Video story, really quick. They had an executive meeting in this book, and during the board meeting, there was a question, or someone proposed that they saw Netflix on the horizon, and at that point in time, it was still DVDs being mailed to your home, and then you had to return it back. That was the model first for Netflix, because broadband wasn't to the level that we have today. someone proposed that we need to change our model because Netflix was coming in the picture, and the entire board said, we're sticking to our business model. And one of their biggest revenue sources was the delay in returning the DVD or the VHS tapes to Blockbuster Video. You could get hit with something like $30, $35 surcharges as a penalty for returning your movies late. And guess where Blockbuster is today as a video store. From a project perspective, what do? Are we saying, let's lock down all of our requirements, business, technical, functional, non-functional requirements, no more changes, let's lock it down? Or do we say, tell us more about the changes you're proposing. We'll see if we can fit it into this current sprint. We'll see if we can deliver it in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Are we embracing, yes, Tony, precisely. Are we embracing those changes? Or are we saying, no more changes, we cannot change. You folks keep changing your mind, we're not going to receive your changes. So what's our mindset? Are we having an infinite game mindset, or have we having a finite game mindset? So just really a great example on how we can adopt the infinite game mindset of the capacity for existential change. So next slide. What examples have you seen today? Used to be a thriving organizations before, thriving products, #1 in the industry. They dominated in the past. Kodak is one example, precisely. Nokia is a big, huge example. Used to be a huge player. R&B right now has been impacted by COVID. Yes, Pan Am. Motorola, I used to work for Motorola. Yes, precisely. A lot of their business nowadays just on the public space with UHF and VHF radios. Yes. Friendster, I do remember Friendster. Wow. So the last one from an infinite game mindset is the capacity for courage and leadership. And Professor Divya again talked about this a whole lot. If we could move to the next slide. Again, I would say from a practicing project management perspective, if I could put a number to it, 80 to 90% as a predictor of a person, as a PM, as a project manager or a scrum master, success, and the success of the team is for that leader's ability to influence without authority. For those of you practicing managers, if it's not apparent to you, this is the biggest predictor of your success. We don't write, when we're given team members, when we're given a developer or a QA person, or I'm given an enterprise architect, or I'm given a technical manager, we do not write those people's HR assessments. It's all dotted line reporting, and it's our ability to influence people, not in a very manipulating way, but it's our ability to influence people for them to focus on the mission, the vision, the project goals, project objectives, to execute without us having to write them up if people are not performing. We don't manage people, we lead people. If you have such a trusting environment, yeah, precisely, Mohammed, we lead without a title. We tell people, hey, keep me posted on what you're working on. Unable to utilize authority to influence, yes. We lead by example, precisely, allow. How do you know people? How do we know what people need and want? Really simply, we can go into the Maslow's model of hierarchy of needs. Again, the psychological needs, the need for safety, intimate relationships, security. But if you want to simplify and understand what people's needs are, go to Daniel Pink's model, And people only need three things. People want to have a sense of purpose. Again, it goes back to the just cause, having mission and vision of the project and having a personal purpose. People want purpose. They want to make sure that what they're working on has meaning, has purpose, benefits people, has a social benefit. Second one is mastery. People want to master what they're doing. So as an example, everyone's interested in enrolling at Lincoln University. And that's awesome. Please do enroll in the course offerings or the diploma and courses offerings by Lincoln University. Please do enroll. We need to be constantly be improving. People, we all want to master what we are working on. The third one is people want autonomy. People don't want to be micromanaged. Again, people want to be able to make their own decisions within the limits, of course, conversing with a team leader, conversing with a project manager. But for the most part, people want to be autonomous and they don't want to be micromanaged. So fairly simple model. Daniel Pink in his book, Drive, is a good book to read about understanding what people need and want beyond the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's model. So for the next page, so if you recognize what people need and want, you are truly sensitive to your team, and you can have a better team dynamics, and the team will love working with each other and love working on the project. Quick story on this one is that the question becomes, the title of the book was Drive. So the question becomes, when you ask your team members, hey, how do you like your job? Mr. Cornell, how do you like your job? Lynn, how do you like your job?
Oh, I love my job.
Yes, that should be the answer that our team members should be saying. They should say, I love my job. I have trusting teams. I have a lot of autonomy in my job. We have transparency. We encourage each other. That should be the answer to the question. And we'll skip a little bit of Noah's story on the Nordstrom coffee shop, because Noah, when asked by Simon Sinek, hey, Noah, how do you like your job? And Noah said, I love my job. So is that the answer to the question when you ask people, how do they like their job? A little bit of expansion, the third or the second element, the second layer or framework around high-performing teams. I love that Professor Devia covered personalities, because I would like to cover this as well. A little bit of expansion in this model. This is relatively new, fall of last year, middle of last year, I believe, by the Table Group. Pat Lencioni heads the Table Group. There are 6 geniuses on the next page. The working genius model says we typically have 2 working geniuses, 2 working competencies personally, and 2 working frustrations. And what are those geniuses? Let's flip to the next page. The very first one is the genius of wonder. And let me explain this. Let me run through them really quick here. The genius of wonder, the genius of invention, the genius of discernment, the genius of galvanizing, the genius of enablement, and the genius of tenacity. The people who have the genius of wonder, if we could flip to the previous slide, please. The genius of wonder, these are the people that you can put in the conference room, and all they can think about is, how do you strategize? Put them in a room for 4 hours, they'll be okay with a whiteboard, and give them whiteboard markers, and they can ask the question, why are we doing it this way? Oh, this is taking too long, or this is costing a lot of money. Why are we, they all ask the question, why is something being done this way? Why is it being designed this way? Why is it being delivered this way? Why is a product being used this way? They are the people that have that kind of a genius. The people that have the genius of invention will say, I think I can solve that problem. Let me show you how we can solve for that problem. They can do process maps, they can do value stream mapping, they can do conceptual design of a solution. But the genius with discernment says to the people doing the wonder and invention will say, show me, I think you're onto something here. Show me your plan. Show me again your process map. Show me your project plan. I think you're onto something here. I think this project needs to move forward. I think this project is costing too much. I think there's a lot of missing details in this project plan, and that's a genius of discernment. The genius of galvanizing is rallying people around a project and saying, hey, let's rally the troops. Let's, this team can help in that particular project. And then the genius of enablement says, this person is struggling. I think he or she needs more training. What do you need? And then the genius of tenacity says, hey, project team, we have 1 week left to go. We can finish this. We can deliver this backlog. Let's finish this. And as a project manager, Pat Lencioni, as a leader, Pat Lencioni is saying, at a minimum, we as project leaders need to have the genius of discernment as one of our working geniuses. So if you can flip to the next page, you'll see in here that in different project phases, in the ideation phase, which would be something like the initiation, genius of wonder and genius of invention would be the key geniuses that need to be engaged. And then during the planning phase, the genius of discernment and galvanizing are the ones that need to be leveraged. And then the genius of enablement and tenacity during the implementation phase. I believe that as a project leader, we have to have the genius of discernment at a minimum. And we need to have the working genius of galvanizing. The enablement and tenacity need to be our working competencies as a project leader, okay? But at the minimum, you have to have the genius of discernment. And then make sure that in your organization, in your team, you have people doing the wonder and invention of those geniuses as you work through projects. So for the next page, I believe these are the winning formula. Have an infinite game mindset, be a servant leader, and not be micromanaging people, lead people. Not so much because we have a title, but we serve people. And again, know your team's personality, leverage them at the appropriate time. I'm not saying the table group model is much better. Know it as well. Know that this model, use them at the appropriate time, at the proper context, and you will have the winning formula for a high-performing team. With that, Mr. Cronal, I hope this is a help to you. If you have any more questions, I'd be happy to, you can private message me on Twitter, and then or you can follow me on LinkedIn. You can comment on my post on LinkedIn, and then we can connect on LinkedIn as well. So thank you for this opportunity. I do appreciate it. I don't take this lightly. Speaking from Chicago to UAE, this is an amazing opportunity. Again, thank you for the folks at Lincoln University. I hope you will consider the school to enroll in any of their programs. Back to you, Mr. Cronal. Again, thank you very much.
Not at all a problem. Thank you for your time, Mr. Bobby. You have been a great, inspiration for many of us, who aspire or you think of planning to upskill ourselves in the project management domain, because It is so very, with yourself speaking exclusively on this topic and with Professor Divya, mentioning a lot about this. So when we combine both of your teachings and the learning that we receive is that project management is something that one should not be taking lightly. So my dear friends, with this wonderful time that we have spent together, I would just love to say something. There are definitely benefits of upskilling or reskilling yourself with a master's degree program. It increases your self-confidence. It helps maintain you the credibility that you're looking forward to. You obtain those transferable skills, and it makes you more curious and helps you think on a strategic dimensions. So if you prefer have a better time management, self-discipline skills, and broader view, and you prefer networking with colleagues from different parts of the world, so Lincoln University draws students from more than 85 different countries, from 44 different nations, who are a part of this virtual student team. And we've got more than 4,000 plus students studying from who have registered from different parts of the world. And definitely, when I talk about if you prefer hiring your income during this pandemic stage, I think, and increase your creativity, please do not hesitate to knock our door. At Lincoln University, we are more than happy to assist you with our programs, and we are here to help you with any learning that you would love to have, right from the short diploma program from a UK awarding body to the master's degree. At Lincoln, we are there to answer all your queries, right? So can we have a short 3-minute video play before we say goodbye to all our participants, of having a short glimpse of our graduation ceremony that we have had 2 years ago. So absolutely, this would help you have an idea of what we are exactly and how our students celebrate success once they are done with the learning.
A very warm welcome to the 2018 graduation ceremony of Geneva Business School in the UAE.
Graduates, today you have a huge responsibility. Your job is not over. You have a responsibility to carry GBS as your name with you from today onwards. You're going to use GBS in your profile, in your interviews, in your resumes, everywhere.
This dream will guide your life and will result in purposeful and resolute actions. The philosophy of excellence, innovation, critical thinking, and high personal integrity that is adopted by Lincoln University of Business and Management has converged successfully with the values of Geneva Business School.
Celebrating this great event, the second graduation ceremony of our MBA students with Geneva Business School. The MBA program that LUBM and Geneva Business School delivered gives each and every one of you endless opportunities.
Bibin, Magavi, Aaron, and all of their team, they do a fantastic job.
Lincoln University of Business Management, friends, I have no doubt that the choice we made in following this MBA will reap benefits throughout our career and be a stepping stone to many successes in the future.
I wish you the very best, very good continuation. All the best.
Amazing feeling, it still gives me a goosebump, whenever I see it, whenever I view it, it's just an amazing feeling when we had more than 400 students graduating with us. Folks, just to let you know that no matter what the situation is, no matter what situation we are going through right now, the pandemic, the new normal, the old normal, I think you need to keep yourself very positive. You are stronger than the virus. You are stronger than everything. The attitude within yourself is going to define your altitude. So please do not break down because of anything that you have. As I will strongly second what Mr. Bobby said and what Professor Divya said, is that you need to keep learning, keep growing, and keep winning at every stage of your life. So please do upskill yourself, reskill yourself with various programs that we offer at Lincoln University or maybe any other institution that you feel that you're comfortable with, but don't stop learning at any stage. From here in Canada with my colleague Divya Nambiar and Mr. Bobby from Illinois, United States, and my other dear colleagues down back in the UAE who are doing an amazing job. And thank you all the participants. I thank all the participants who have taken time to attend this webinar, who did bear with us at the very beginning because of some technical glitch that we had. Please do excuse us for the same. Do stay safe. Take care of yourself. May God bless you. Have a great time ahead. Thank you very much. Bye for now. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Divya. Thank you, Mr. Bobby. It was just amazing to have you today. And